My daughter warned me. Mom, don't come home tonight. When I walked in anyway, I finally saw who they really were. I knew the moment Dean stood at the head of the dinner table that he was gearing up to humiliate me again. He spread his arms like he was blessing the room, even though the house did not belong to him and never would. Nora, he said loudly, why are you even sitting here? A woman who spent her entire life cleaning toilets should not have a place in this family. His voice carried through the dining room like a slap. Mira set her fork down with exaggerated delicacy and sighed. Please, Mom, do not embarrass us again. People already think this house shelters failures. Ethan kept his head lowered, shoulders hunched, unable to look at me. His silence always hurt more than their insults. Because silence from someone you love is not silence at all, it is abandonment wearing a quiet mask. Dean leaned closer, smirking as if my discomfort confirmed something he had always believed. You really drag down the Marlowe name, he continued. You are like a stain we cannot scrub out. Dean spoke as if cruelty were a skill he had perfected, a weapon he kept polished for moments exactly like this. Then Mira added, if she stays much longer, our kids will grow up cursed. Bad luck leaks from people like her. Their words were venomous. But what stung worst was Ethan's refusal to lift his eyes from his plate. Dean noticed and laughed. Look at your son, Nora. Even he is ashamed of you. Ethan did not deny it. He did not defend me. He simply pressed his lips together, pretending the conversation was happening to someone else. Their hatred for me did not come from anything truly unforgivable. It came from a wound Ethan never allowed to heal and lies Dean never stopped whispering. When Ethan was 15, he stole my credit card to pay off online gaming debts. I caught him, but instead of reporting him, I sat him down and made him return the money himself. I thought teaching him accountability was better than punishment, but Ethan felt humiliated, and Dean, who was already circling him like a hawk, leaned in and poisoned that moment. Your mother loves control more than she loves you, he told my son. She wanted to shame you. Ethan chose Dean's version, and from then on he saw me not as a mother trying to guide him, but as the enemy who had crushed his freedom. Mira's hatred was even more absurd. The first time I met her, she was holding her little cousin awkwardly. I simply said, "You look a bit unfamiliar with babies." It was meant as gentle observation, nothing more. But in her mind, the comment twisted into, "Your mother insulted me, Ethan. She said I would be a terrible mother." She repeated that story so many times that she eventually believed it, and once insecurity turns into resentment, truth becomes irrelevant. But Dean, his hatred had roots, deep ones. Years before Malcolm, my husband, died, Dean borrowed a large sum from him after a disastrous investment. Malcolm helped him quietly but kept a written record. In his updated will, the one Dean later hid, Malcolm wrote a single line that sealed my fate in Dean's eyes. "Nora knows what you did." Dean panicked. If Malcolm died, I would know everything. If I knew everything, I could expose him. Instead of admitting his wrongdoing, he recast himself as the victim and cast me as the threat. His resentment grew into an obsession, and eliminating me from Ethan's life became his long-term project. That night at dinner, he escalated. "You are nothing but filth sticking to our family tree," he said. "A woman like you pollutes the air." Mira nodded, adding, "Ethan, I swear if your mother stays here, our future children will inherit her bad energy." Ethan flinched but said nothing. I felt something shift inside me, fear and sorrow mixing into a quiet resolve. Not revenge yet, just the first spark of it. Dean grabbed his glass and tapped it like he wanted full attention. "Let me put it plainly," he announced. "You are unwanted, Nora. You do not deserve a seat at this table. You make us look pathetic." I opened my mouth, but before words could form, he cut me off. "Do not talk back. People like you do not get opinions." His voice was sharp enough to sever bone. Mira laughed lightly. "Honestly, Ethan, why do you still let her stay here? She must enjoy leeching off us." Leeching? After everything I had done for my son? After raising him alone when Malcolm was sick? After selling my jewelry to pay for his college applications? But none of that mattered now, because the narrative Dean built had already swallowed the truth. Then Dean leaned forward, eyes gleaming with malice. "You know what the real problem is, Nora?" he asked. "You walk around thinking you deserve respect. But respect is earned. What have you ever earned?" Ethan finally looked at me. Not with anger, with something worse, disappointment. I swallowed my pride and steadied my voice. "Ethan, please do not believe everything they say." Dean slammed his palm on the table. "See? She is manipulating you again. This woman destroys every room she walks into." In that moment, surrounded by people who wished me smaller, quieter, erased, I realized something unsettling. They were not trying to hurt me. They were trying to break me. And I felt the first fragile click of a decision forming inside my chest. I would not let them, not this time. The morning after that cruel dinner, I woke to the sound of keys jingling. Before I could sit up, Dean pushed my bedroom door open without knocking. His silhouette filled the frame like a warden inspecting a cell. "New policy," he said, stepping in as if the space already belonged to him. He reached behind the door, plucked the small brass key from the lock, and held it up with a smirk. "You do not get privacy anymore. People like you do stupid things when unsupervised." He pocketed the key and walked out without giving me time to respond. I stared at the empty doorway, feeling the walls close in. At breakfast, Mira slid a plate toward me, cold leftovers from the night before, still stiff with congealed fat. She kept the warm plates for herself, Dean, and Ethan. "This is appropriate for you," she said casually. "Hot food is for people who contribute." Ethan kept his gaze fixed on his eggs, pretending not to hear. I tried to speak softly. "Ethan, could we talk later today?" Dean answered instead. "She thinks she gets private conversations. How adorable." Then he leaned back, crossed his arms, and announced, "From now on, household resources go to people who matter. That includes electricity." He shot me a pointed look. "So do not touch the washing machine. The power bill is not for freeloaders." When I gathered my laundry that afternoon and carried it to the garage anyway, hoping he would not notice, Dean appeared as if he had been waiting around the corner. "What did I say?" He snatched the basket from my hands and dumped my clothes onto the cement floor. "You cost us money every time you press a button. Money this family earns, not you." I bent down to pick up my things, my fingers trembling. Mira walked by slowly, eyeing me with a sneer. "Your age group belongs in nursing homes, Nora. Every day you stay here costs us." She tapped her manicured nail against the washer. "And you dare to use our appliances." I swallowed the ache in my throat. "I have never tried to be a burden," she snorted. "That is exactly what a burden would say." Ethan walked in during the last part, but instead of saying anything, he turned around and walked out. His silence had turned into a habit, one that cut deeper each time he used it. Later that evening, I approached him again. He sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone, tapping rapidly, as if the screen offered him sanctuary. "Ethan," I whispered, "please listen. I did not abandon your father. I was with him every moment he allowed me to be." He stiffened, hands gripping his phone. "Dean told me everything," he muttered. "Dad trusted him. He said Dad died feeling alone." My heart twisted. "That is not true. Your father hid his illness from me. He did not want me to worry." Ethan shook his head slowly, confusion and anger battling across his features. "Why would he hide it from you? Why would he tell Dean and not you?" He swallowed hard. "It makes sense, Mom," Dean said. "Dad felt neglected." There it was, the wound Dean had carved into him for years, festering until Ethan believed the rot was truth. I reached for his hand, but he pulled away. Dean's voice echoed from the hallway. "Let me explain it for her, Ethan. Your father felt abandoned. She was never there when he needed her. Men do not lie about that." I stood, shaking. "Dean, stop poisoning him." He stepped closer, his grin widening. "I am not poisoning him. I am enlightening him." Then he placed a heavy hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You see, son, your mother makes everything about herself, even your father's death." Ethan bowed his head, shoulders sagging under the weight of manipulation he could not recognize. And that vulnerability, his raw, unguarded confusion, was exactly what Dean fed on. But the danger did not stop at emotional control. Several days later, Dean entered the kitchen with a stack of papers in his hand. "Ethan, we need your signature. Just a routine financial measure to help protect the family. Power of attorney forms. Simple." My stomach nodded. Why would Ethan need power of attorney? Dean smiled at me like a teacher addressing a slow child. "It is not for him. It is for you. He is acting on your behalf." I stepped back. "I never authorized that." He shrugged. "You do not need to. You said enough things over the years that we can interpret your wishes." He slid the pen toward Ethan. "Sign." Ethan looked uncertain. "Dean, shouldn't Mom at least agree?" Dean sighed dramatically. "She already did. She just does not remember. Stress makes elderly minds unreliable." I felt the blood drain from my face. "That is a lie." Mira approached with an envelope in her hand. "Actually, Nora, you did sign something." She pulled out a birthday card I had written to her months earlier. "See? Same handwriting." She had practiced my signature from that card. It was a small detail, but small details are exactly how people lose their entire lives, one forged line at a time. She had studied it, copied it, used it. Dean held up the forged document with confidence. "Once we file this, Ethan will legally manage your affairs, which is good considering your memory is slipping." "My memory is fine," I whispered. Dean leaned in until I could smell his cologne. "Not for long." Ethan wavered, phone still in his hand, eyes flickering between us. He was torn, but manipulation had wrapped him so tightly he could not recognize danger even when it stood inches from his face. Dean pushed the pen toward him again. "Sign. Protect your family." And in that moment, watching my own son hover on the edge of making a decision that could erase my rights, my home, and my autonomy, I realized something chilling. They were not just trying to control me. They were trying to erase me completely. Dean had insisted on bringing me to the so-called family networking event, but the moment we stepped inside, he placed his hand on my back and guided me forward with a theatrical flourish. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced loudly, dragging me toward the center of the crowded room. "This is the homeowner. Well, the former homeowner. She will be moving into a nursing home very soon, so we thought it was time to celebrate her graceful exit." A ripple of awkward laughter moved through the guests. My throat tightened. I had never agreed to leave my home. Before I could speak, Mira appeared at Dean's side, holding a glass of red wine. She tilted her head in mock affection. "Smile for everyone, Nora. It is the last event where you will still be invited." Then she tipped the glass forward, letting the wine spill across my blouse. The liquid bled through the fabric, cold and humiliating. Mira gasped theatrically. "Oops. She is used to stains. It suits her." People snickered, some muttering behind their hands. I saw Ethan standing across the room, frozen in place, eyes wide like a child caught between two fires. When a couple approached him and whispered something, Ethan cleared his throat and forced a polite smile. "My mother, she is not really herself these days," he said. "She forgets everything." It has been hard. My heart clenched. Hard. That was the word he used to describe me. Not my mother, not the woman who raised me, but a burden he had been conditioned to resent. A man near the fireplace frowned. "Funny," he said. "I ran into her yesterday outside the market. She remembered my name. She was perfectly coherent." His skepticism cut through the room. Mira stepped in immediately, pressing her hand to her chest. "Oh, that is common with her type of cognitive decline," she said sweetly. "It comes and goes. She has hallucinations, false memories. She even imagines conversations that never happened." She leaned close to me, voice dropping into a whisper meant to break me. "Better stay quiet so you do not embarrass yourself further." I opened my mouth, but before a single word left it, a voice from the entrance cut through the room. "Excuse me," the man said. The crowd parted around him like water. He walked with calm confidence, a tailored suit hanging perfectly on his tall frame. His presence shifted the air. "My name is Braxton Hale." Dean straightened immediately, pasting on a smile. "Braxton, so glad you came. We were just discussing—" Braxton raised a hand sharply, silencing him. His eyes settled on me with surprising gentleness. Mrs. Nora Marlowe, he said. We met this morning regarding the property transfer documents. A murmur spread across the room. I felt my pulse throb in my neck. This morning? I whispered. Braxton nodded. You told me clearly that you never consented to sell your home. A wave of silence swept the room. Mira's smile faltered. Dean stiffened, and then Braxton lifted his phone. I think everyone here deserves to understand what is happening, he said, pressing play. The audio crackled before voices emerged, familiar, sharp, unmistakable. Mira. Once she is gone, the house is ours. The paperwork will look legitimate. Ethan. Just hurry. I cannot stand her anymore. I want her out of my life. The air vanished from my lungs. My knees almost buckled. Ethan's voice, my son's voice, cold, irritated, exhausted with me. Gasps filled the room. Someone muttered, "My God." Dean lunged forward. This is taken out of context. Braxton did not flinch. Context? He played another clip. Mira. She will not last long. And once she is tucked away in that nursing home, she can sign whatever we want. Dean's voice followed. She does not need to sign anything if we forge it properly. The room erupted. Whispering, disgusted stares, sudden distance as if Dean and Mira had become toxic to the touch. I stood trembling, but another surge rose inside me, a pulse of something fierce and awakening. Braxton lowered the phone. Mrs. Marlowe told me she had no intention of selling her home, yet you have already arranged buyers and prepared fraudulent documents. His gaze sharpened. Callum Reyes sent me here to ensure she is not exploited. Dean's face drained of color. Mira stammered something unintelligible. Ethan, my son, stared at the floor, his expression collapsing in on itself. And in the hum of shocked whispers, I heard my own heartbeat steadying, not with fear, but with the first true spark of justice. If you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. Braxton turned to me. Mrs. Marlowe, you are not leaving your home. Not tonight. Not ever without your consent. For the first time in a long time, I lifted my chin. I was not small. I was not silent. And this time, the room saw it too. I met Callum Reyes the next morning in a quiet corner office overlooking Lake Erie. The blinds were half drawn, leaving wide bands of light across the table where he had placed a thick envelope sealed with a stamp I had not seen in years, Malcolm's attorney's crest. My breath faltered when I recognized it. Nora, Callum said softly, sliding the envelope toward me. This is your husband's actual will, the one Dean suppressed. For a moment, I could not move. My fingers hovered above the seal, trembling, before finally breaking it open. Papers slid out, legal sheets, notarized, untouched by forgery. The first line struck me like a bell. I, Malcolm Marlowe, leave all property, assets, and accounts solely to my wife, Nora Marlowe. All, every word of it spelled out what Dean had spent years convincing Ethan was his birthright, what Mira believed she would someday inherit. My home, the savings, the land Malcolm had purchased decades ago with sweat and sacrifice. They belonged to me. They always had. I kept reading, breath shaking, until I reached a handwritten page tucked in the back. The moment my eyes saw the familiar looping letters, my heart twisted. My Nora, the note began. If you are reading this, it means I could not protect you myself. The room blurred around me. Callum remained quiet, folding his hands. I know Dean still circles our family, pretending loyalty. The letter continued. He owes us more than he ever repaid. I fear he will try to manipulate Ethan after I am gone. Please be cautious. He is not the man he pretends to be. I pressed the page to my chest. Malcolm, you knew, I whispered. Callum nodded. He worried about you, enough to change his will quietly without telling Dean. But why keep it secret from me? My voice cracked. He said he did not want to burden you, Callum explained. He knew you would insist on confronting Dean yourself, even when you were already carrying too much. My throat tightened. Malcolm had always known me better than I knew myself. Callum cleared his throat gently and opened another folder, this one containing several sealed letters bearing dates that stretched across the last year of Malcolm's life. These were found in his medical file and at the clinic. Dean intercepted most of them before they ever reached your mailbox. He laid them out in front of me. I opened the first. My love, I must keep the truth of my illness from you a bit longer. You work too hard already. I cannot stand the thought of adding fear to your days. My breath hitched. I opened the next. I know you will blame yourself someday, thinking you were not there enough. Please don't. I hid too much from you. I chose that, not you. Another letter. Dean visits me sometimes. He asks about our finances. Too many questions. I do not trust the way he speaks about future arrangements. Be careful. The final letter nearly broke me. You have never failed me, Nora. You have never abandoned me. If anyone tells you otherwise, they lie out of fear or selfishness. Remember that. I gripped the pages until they trembled. Every accusation Ethan had thrown at me. Every cruel whisper Mira repeated. Every pointed look from Dean. All of it had been built on lies, on manipulated guilt, on truths stolen before they reached me. He knew I would be blamed, I whispered. He tried to protect me even from beyond the grave. Callum nodded. And now, the truth is yours to hold. Legally, ethically, completely. I wiped my eyes, then squared my shoulders as if Malcolm's hands had settled on them. Callum, I said quietly. Dean has controlled my son, my home, my life. He humiliated me publicly. He reduced me to someone small, someone silent. My voice steadied. No more. He studied me with the kind of respect no one in Dean's house had shown me in years. What do you want to do, Nora? I folded the letters, one by one, aligning the edges with care. I want to take back everything they stole, not out of revenge, out of justice. Something stirred inside me as I spoke, fiercer than anger, deeper than grief, a certainty. I want my home, I said. I want my freedom. I want my husband's truth restored, and I want them to face what they've done. Callum nodded slowly. Then we will move forward. I will file the will with the court, invoke the elder fraud statutes, and issue a cease order to anyone attempting to transfer your property. A quiet strength settled into my bones. For the first time since Malcolm died, I felt something unshakable. My voice came out steadier than I expected. Good. Let them feel the ground shake under their feet. Let them see who I really am. And in that moment, I no longer felt like a woman cornered. I felt like a woman rising. When the legal notice arrived, it came in a thick white envelope stamped with the court seal. Dean opened it at the kitchen counter while I rinsed a teacup, pretending to mind my own business. The moment his eyes scanned the first page, his face drained of color. His jaw tightened, and the paper shook in his hands. "What the hell is this?" he muttered, though loud enough to fill the whole room. Mira hurried over, snatching the summons from him. She read it quickly, then gasped. She's contesting the estate? Claiming ownership? Of everything? Her eyes cut toward me with venom. You sneaky witch. Dean slammed the document on the table. She thinks she can take what's mine? She thinks she can challenge me after everything I've done for this family? I didn't respond. Silence was my armor, and for once, it struck him like a slap. He stormed toward me. "You're making a mistake," he growled. "You'll regret this." I looked up at him calmly. "I'm only claiming what Malcolm left to me." His nostrils flared. "That will isn't real." "It is," I said softly. "And it's already been submitted." He stood rigid for a long moment before turning away. But I saw the truth in his posture, in the way his shoulders curled inward. He was scared. The next 48 hours were a parade of slammed doors, angry muttering, and frantic phone calls. I overheard fragments. "Can't let it get validated. Find the original drafts. Destroy them." Reyes must have forged something. His desperation grew like mold in the walls. Then, the explosion came. I was folding towels in the hallway when Mira burst toward me, waving her wallet dramatically. "You disgusting leech," she shrieked. "You stole from me." I blinked. "What are you talking about?" "Don't you dare play innocent," she screamed. "My money is gone, $200. You took it because you're a pathetic old woman who can't earn a penny." Dean barreled in behind her. "She's been stealing little things for months. I knew it. I knew she'd show her true colors sooner or later. He jabbed a finger toward me. "You're done." I stood frozen. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. I had done nothing. I barely had access to my own belongings, let alone theirs. Ethan appeared at the top of the stairs, drawn by the shouting. "What's happening?" Mira turned her performance toward him instantly, tears welling as if on command. "Your mother stole from me, Ethan. She robbed us." He stared at me with a mixture of exhaustion and something far worse, belief. It felt like someone pressing a thumb into a bruise that had never healed. "I didn't take anything," I whispered. Mira snapped. "Liar!" But before Dean could stoke the fire any further, the front door opened. Callum Reyes stepped inside with the calm precision of a man who knew he belonged exactly where he was. "Good afternoon," he said evenly. "I'm here because we need clarity on several matters." Mira immediately rushed toward him. "Perfect timing. Arrest her or whatever you lawyers do. She stole from me." Callum raised one eyebrow. "Is that so?" "Yes," Mira cried. "She took my money. She's a thief." "Interesting," Callum said, reaching into his briefcase and producing a small device. "Because yesterday, I installed temporary security cameras in the common areas of this house to ensure Mrs. Marlowe's safety during the legal proceedings." Dean froze. Mira's face blanched. Ethan stiffened. I stood still as stone. Callum pressed a button. Footage appeared on his tablet. There was Mira alone in the living room, slipping 2 bills from her wallet and sliding them into her own jacket. Then she clutched her purse, gasped dramatically, spun around, and began rehearsing her outrage in the mirror. Mira on screen. "That hag stole from me. I knew she would. Poor me." Mira off screen. "Turn it off. Turn it off, right now." Callum didn't flinch. "This is time-stamped, stored in cloud backup, and admissible." Dean swore under his breath. Ethan stared at the floor, shame flooding his face. "This is harassment," Mira spat, voice trembling now. "You invaded our privacy." Callum cut her off. "You fabricated a theft to influence legal proceedings. That is a crime, and you did it in front of a vulnerable elder dependent on you for housing." The room was silent, but the silence didn't last, because what Callum revealed next cracked the foundation beneath the house. He opened a separate folder. "Dean," the bank responded to my inquiry. He placed a stamped letter on the table. "They confirmed you used Nora's property that is legally hers as collateral for your loans." Dean's face contorted. "That land was Malcolm's. I had every right." "No," Callum said sharply. "You forged her authorization. You signed documents claiming she consented. That is bank fraud, a federal offense." Mira stumbled backward. Ethan's hand trembled against the railing. Callum continued, steady and merciless. "The bank is opening a formal investigation. They have already frozen the credit line attached to your business accounts." Dean muttered. "You can't do this." But the fight was gone from his voice. "I haven't done anything," Callum replied. "You did." The room felt suddenly small, as if the walls themselves leaned in to witness his downfall. Dean staggered to a chair, gripping the back of it so tightly his knuckles blanched. "My company will collapse. Everything I built, gone." Callum looked at him without pity. "You built it on stolen ground," Mira hissed. "This isn't fair." But even Ethan murmured under his breath, "Mira, stop, just stop." Mira's eyes widened, as if betrayal could only go one direction. For the first time, Ethan looked at me not with hatred, not even with confusion, but with the flicker of a man waking from years of manipulation. I did not look away, because this wasn't just proof, it wasn't just vindication. It was the beginning of justice, and justice was finally on my side. The house was unusually quiet that night, the kind of silence that feels staged, like everyone inside is holding their breath. I had just finished folding a blanket when Dean stormed into the living room, his steps heavy, his rage no longer masked by the polite cruelty he usually wore like a tailored suit. "Get up," he snarled. I looked up slowly. "Dean, it's late. What is—" "Save it." He pointed toward the door with a trembling hand. "You're leaving this house tonight." My heart thudded once, painfully. "Tonight?" He moved closer so quickly I had to take a step back. "Before sunrise, before you destroy anything else I've built. You think you can take my assets? My company? My reputation? No, I won't let you stay here another second. Dean, I whispered, I haven't destroyed anything. This is simply the truth coming out. He laughed, a short, sharp sound that mirrored breaking glass. Truth? You wouldn't know truth if it slapped you. He grabbed my arm, his fingers pressing deep enough to bruise. Pack your garbage. You've got 5 minutes. I tried to steady my breathing. This is my home. Not anymore, he snapped. Not when you're stabbing us in the back. Not when you're dragging our name through the mud. Before I could answer, Ethan appeared at the bottom of the stairs. He looked tired, uncertain, like someone torn between two storms. But then Mira stepped behind him, arms folded, chin lifted, and Ethan's spine hardened. Dad? He asked. What's going on? Dean gestured toward me like he was unveiling a criminal. She's leaving. Tonight. I'm done with her sabotage. She wants us ruined. She can watch from the outside. Ethan turned to me, jaw tight. Mom, why are you doing this to us? My breath caught. Ethan, I'm not. He cut me off, voice rising. You are a burden. Everything has gotten worse since you started fighting with Dad. You're tearing the family apart. The words hit me like a physical blow. Not because they were new, but because this time he said them with conviction, full, forceful, unforgiving. Ethan, I whispered, I am your mother. He looked away. And you're ruining our lives. Something inside me crumbled, not completely, but enough to make me sway where I stood. Dean smirked, emboldened by Ethan's collapse into his shadow. You hurt him. Leave. Now. He yanked my suitcase from the closet and shoved it into my hands so hard the weight nearly toppled me. Move, he barked, or I'll drag you out myself. I felt the old ache rise in my chest, the instinct to shrink, to endure, to simply survive, but something else rose too. A small, steady voice inside me whispering, This isn't your shame. But Dean didn't give me time to gather myself. He seized my wrist and marched me toward the front door, shoving my suitcase ahead of him. Mira stepped aside with a satisfied smile. Good riddance, Nora. Honestly, I'm shocked you lasted this long. You should have left years ago, Ethan added, softer but no less cutting. My fingers trembled against the handle of my suitcase. I wanted to speak, to say something that might reach whatever was left of the boy I raised, but the words refused to leave me. Dean flung the door open, letting a gust of cold air sweep through the hallway. Out. The wind stung my eyes, or maybe that was the tears threatening to fall. He shoved me forward, my foot stumbling onto the porch, and then a flash of red and blue lit the street. Another flare. Then another. Doors slammed. Heavy footsteps approached. A voice boomed from the yard. Mr. Dean Marlowe, Cleveland Police Department. Step away from Mrs. Marlowe immediately. Dean froze, his hand still gripping my arm. What is this? Who called? Hands where we can see them, an officer ordered, climbing the steps with decisive force. Mira gasped. Ethan stepped back, pale. 2 officers approached Dean while another moved toward me, placing a steadying hand behind my back. Ma'am, you're safe now, he said softly. Dean's face contorted with disbelief. Safe? From what? I haven't done anything. The lead officer opened a folder. We have received evidence submitted tonight by Attorney Callum Reyes. Allegations include financial fraud, forged authorizations regarding property collateral, coercion, and elder abuse. My breath caught. Callum had sent everything. The officer continued. We also have footage verifying an attempted setup involving Mrs. Mira Marlowe, as well as recordings of conversations indicating intent to remove Mrs. Marlowe under false pretenses. Dean barked a harsh, wild laugh. This is insane. She's lying. That lawyer planted something. The officer remained unmoved. Mr. Marlowe, you are required to come with us for questioning. If you refuse, we will detain you by force. Mira rushed forward. Dean, do something. Ethan stood rigid, shock swallowing his voice. Dean pointed at me as officers stepped closer. You did this. You poisoned them against me. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The truth was now carrying itself. Mr. Marlowe, the officer said firmly, turn around and place your hands behind your back. Dean's face purpled with rage. This isn't over, Nora. You hear me? This isn't. The cuffs clicked around his wrists, cutting off the rest. Mira began crying loud, theatrical sobs that didn't match the cold calculation in her eyes. Ethan simply stared at the porch floor, his world cracking open beneath him. And I took a breath so deep it felt like the first real breath I had drawn in years. For the first time, I wasn't the one being thrown out of a home. For the first time, the door behind me wasn't closing on my life. It was closing on theirs. And justice, quiet, steady, undeniable, was finally walking through it. The courtroom felt colder than I expected, a kind of cold that settles into your bones when you know the truth is finally about to walk into the light. I sat at the front, hands folded tightly, while whispers floated behind me, neighbors, acquaintances, former business partners of Dean's, who came to watch the fall of a man who had strutted through Cleveland like he owned every street. Dean entered, flanked by deputies, his wrists still bruised from the cuffs he had fought, his eyes locked on mine with a mixture of desperation and hatred, as if I had pulled the world out from under him instead of simply reclaiming what was always mine. Mira followed, pale, eyes darting around the courtroom like a trapped rabbit. Ethan sat behind her, shoulders slumped, unable to lift his gaze long enough to find me. The judge's gavel fell. The tension thickened. "Prosecution may begin," the judge said. The prosecutor stepped forward, voice calm, steady, devastating. "Your Honor, we present Exhibit A video testimony recorded by the late Malcolm Ward, husband of Mrs. Nora Ward." My breath caught. I knew it was coming, but seeing the screen lower in front of the court made my heart pound so hard it echoed in my ears. The lights dimmed. And then Malcolm appeared. Not the young man I once married. Not the strong provider who carried groceries in one arm and our son in the other. But Malcolm, near the end, frail, eyes sunken, breath shallow, yet still fighting to protect me even from beyond the grave. "If you're watching this," he said quietly, "it means I didn't make it home." A ripple went through the court. Dean shifted in his seat, his jaw tightening. "I've learned that Dean Marlowe borrowed money from me, more than $70,000, after a failed investment. I agreed to help him, but he feared Nora would discover the debt. Instead of taking responsibility, he blamed her for my illness, for my weakness, even for things she had nothing to do with." Dean slammed his fist against the table. "Lies." He was confused, doped up on medication. The judge glared over her glasses. "Mr. Marlowe, one more interruption and you'll be removed." Malcolm continued, unshaken by the outburst he would never hear. "Nora never neglected me. I hid my condition from her to protect her. She worked too hard already. If she is ever accused of failing me, know this: the failure was mine for not letting her help." A strangled sound slipped from my throat, but Malcolm wasn't done. "Dean has a temper," he said. "And if anything ever happens to me or my wife, please, look at him first." The video ended. Silence swallowed the courtroom like a tide. Then Dean erupted. "This is manipulation. This is fabrication. She made him say that." He pointed at me wildly. "She poisoned him against me. She—" "Remove him," the judge snapped. Two deputies grabbed him by the arms. He thrashed, roaring like an animal, but the cuffs clicked, ending his last attempt at dominance. Mira trembled beside her attorney, mascara streaking down her cheeks. The prosecutor turned to the judge. "Your Honor, Exhibit B." The screen lit again. This time it showed Mira standing in the living room, slipping cash into her own purse, staging a theft she later blamed on me. The room murmured in disgust. Mira buried her face in her hands. The video switched. Clips of her mocking me, pushing me in hallways, whispering poison into Ethan's ear when she thought no one else was home. "You should be dead already, Nora," she hissed in one recording, her voice cold enough to raise goosebumps even now. Another clip played. "If she's gone, everything is ours. Ethan, just sign the papers." Ethan closed his eyes. Shame painted his face the way truth sometimes does to men who finally see themselves. The prosecutor stepped forward again. "Your Honor, what we see here is elder abuse, coercion, manipulation, and a multi-month campaign to remove Mrs. Ward from her own property, which Mr. Marlowe had already used illegally as collateral for his business loans. The judge's expression hardened. Defense may respond. Dean's attorney rose. Your Honor, Mr. Marlowe was under immense financial pressure. That does not justify fraud, the judge interrupted. Mira's attorney stood next. My client was manipulated by Mr. Marlowe, but the judge cut him off too. The footage clearly shows her independent involvement. Ethan suddenly rose from his seat. Your Honor, he said, voice cracking. I believed every lie they told me. I thought my mother had abandoned us, abandoned my dad, ruined everything. But I see now none of it was her fault. It was mine. I let them turn me against her. The courtroom went quiet. Ethan's voice shook. I don't deserve forgiveness. I just want the truth to be heard. He sat back down, head in his hands. The judge took a long breath. Please rise for sentencing. Everyone stood. Dean Marlowe, she said, voice ringing with finality. You are found guilty of financial fraud, property coercion, elder abuse, and falsification of legal documents. You are sentenced to 15 years in state prison, with no possibility of early release for the first 9. Dean collapsed into his chair, the fight finally draining from his body. Mira Marlowe, the judge continued, you are found guilty of defamation, staged criminal accusation, and participation in coercive abuse. You are hereby sentenced to 6 years in prison. Mira sobbed, reaching for Ethan, but he pulled his hand back. And lastly, the judge said, turning to Ethan, though not criminally culpable, your involvement reflects severe emotional negligence. Your authority over Mrs. Ward's affairs is revoked. You are mandated to undergo psychological counseling. Ethan whispered, I understand. Then the judge faced me. Mrs. Ward, your name is cleared. All property, assets, and legal rights are restored to you. My knees nearly buckled. Tears spilled freely, hot and overwhelming. After years of humiliation, erasure, and cruelty, I finally had my life back. I finally had justice. And when I looked at Dean, the man who once told me I was nothing now, shackled, defeated, exposed, I felt something I never thought I'd feel again. I felt whole. When the courthouse finally emptied and the murmurs of spectators faded down the marble hallway, I remained seated on the wooden bench outside the courtroom. My breath felt oddly steady, as if my ribs had been unshackled one by one. For a long moment I just sat there, letting the silence wrap around me like a long-lost coat, warm and protective in a way I had not felt in years. I was free, truly free, but my heart ached in a place even justice could not fully mend. I heard footsteps approach, slow and hesitant. When I lifted my head, Ethan stood there, his hands trembling, his face stripped of all the arrogance and defensiveness he had worn like armor for so long. Without saying a word, he lowered himself to his knees right in front of me. The gesture startled me more than any sentence handed down in that courtroom. Mom. His voice cracked, thin as paper. Mom, I was wrong. He bowed his head, tears slipping onto the floor between us. I let them use me. I let them twist everything you ever were. I thought I was protecting my family, but I was hurting you over and over, and I did not even stop to question it. He swallowed hard, shoulders shaking. Dean told me you resented me. Mira told me you held me back, and I believed them because it was easier than facing my guilt about Dad, about not seeing how sick he really was. I blamed you for things that were never your fault. I reached out, placing a hand on his cheek the same way I did when he was a boy who scraped his knees climbing trees in our backyard. He leaned into my touch like a man who had been starving for forgiveness. Ethan, I said quietly, you forgot me, but I will never forget you. His sobs broke open, raw and unfiltered. He pressed his forehead against my hands. Can you ever forgive me? I want to make things right. I want to rebuild everything I destroyed. Forgiveness is a strange thing. It does not erase. It does not blind. It simply opens a door where a wall used to stand. And I was tired of living behind walls. I nodded once. You are my son. You never stopped being my son. He cried harder, but for the first time, the tears did not feel like weapons. They felt like beginnings. 2 weeks later, I walked through the front door of my house, without anyone telling me where to stand or how quietly I should breathe. The wooden porch creaked under my feet. The same sound Malcolm used to tease about when he said, "This house groans like an old man." I smiled for the first time in what felt like forever, as the scent of aged pine and dust carried memories back across the years. The living room was still cluttered from when Dean and Mira tried turning it into a sale-ready property. But now, nothing belonged to them. Every document, every title, every key had been returned to me. I walked through each room slowly, touching the walls with the reverence of someone returning to a sanctuary. This house had been stolen in spirit long before anyone tried to take it legally, but now I could breathe inside its rooms again. The very next morning, Callum Reyes arrived, wearing rolled-up sleeves and carrying a folder under one arm and a toolbox under the other. He stepped onto my porch with that calm, steady presence that had carried me through every legal twist and every moment when I nearly lost my courage. "Thought I'd help you get settled," he said with a soft smile. "Your house deserves a fresh start." We spent the afternoon replacing a loose railing, tightening window frames, and sorting old documents that Malcolm had tucked away in places I never checked. Callum explained every legal protection now surrounding my property, making sure I understood that no one, not a spiteful in-law, not a manipulative spouse of my son, not a fraudulent businessman, could ever touch what belonged to me again. "You're safe now," he told me, placing the completed binder on the kitchen table. "The law is on your side, permanently." I looked at him for a moment, studying the quiet kindness in his expression. "Thank you," I whispered. "You were there when no one else was." He shook his head. "You did the hard part, Nora. You stood up. For a woman everyone once called powerless, those words felt like the purest silver placed in my hands." Ethan visited often in the weeks that followed. Not with excuses or dramatic tears, just small acts of rebuilding. Groceries, fixing a broken fence, planting flowers in the front yard like he used to as a child, helping Malcolm on Saturday mornings. Sometimes he simply sat at my kitchen table, listening as I told him things he had forgotten, or perhaps never knew. One evening, he held Malcolm's old watch, the same one I kept in a drawer since the day he passed. He turned it over slowly. "Mom, Dad really loved you." "Yes," I said, voice softening. "He did. And you? You loved us both more than we ever understood." I reached out and squeezed his hand. "Now you understand." He nodded, eyes glassy but clear, finally clear. When the house grew quiet again that night, I stepped out onto the porch. A thin breeze swept across the yard, stirring the leaves just enough to make the wind chimes ring. The sky above Cleveland stretched wide, painted with the soft glow of early evening, the kind of sky Malcolm loved to watch with a cup of tea in hand. I stood there for a long time, feeling the boards beneath my feet, the familiar creak of a home that had endured storms just as I had. The world felt solid again. And as I looked out across my reclaimed life, I said the words that had been building inside me since the day Dean tried to break me. They once said all I could do was scrub toilets, but the truth is, they never knew I could stand up. I lifted my chin, letting the night air brush against my face. Because I had stood up, I was still standing, and I was not going anywhere. My dears, if you stayed with me until the very end, thank you. This story was not just about pain or betrayal. It was about standing back up when the world tells you to stay small. It was about remembering your worth even when others try to bury it. And if my voice reached you today, if it reminded you of your own strength or your own quiet battles, then I am grateful. And if you want to keep walking with me through these stories of truth, healing, and justice, please make sure to subscribe to Grand MA True Stories. Your support keeps my little lantern glowing, so we can continue shining light on the lives so many people try to silence. Until the next story, my loves, Grandma is holding your hand from here.